Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This evening I'm going to be doing another movie review for you all. This movie is a horror comedy from Australia, English language, released in the year 2024, directed by Ryan Coonan, and this film is called The Red. It's also known as Rippy in North America, so if you can't find under one title, please look for it under the other. So the story to The Red, we have an outback town that has been besieged by a vicious animal. Now, initially this police officer in charge of the investigation thinks that it's a maniac on the loose, so she arrests this suspect and the killings continue. So obviously she's got the wrong person. But then the more she investigates these crimes, the more she realises that there's something truly horrifying going on. In fact, it is an undead kangaroo. So this kangaroo is stopping at nothing, and so it's up to this woman to save the day, but at the same time she has inner demons relating to the passing of her father when she was young. So she has plenty to juggle with, and whether or not she actually saves the town is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on The Red, aka Rippy. When I saw the trailer to this movie, I thought to myself, yes, it was about time they made a horror film about the kangaroo. Now, the kangaroo is an iconic feature of Australia, one of my favourite animals. Here in Canberra, we get the eastern grey kangaroo, and this movie actually depicts the red kangaroo, which is in the outback, and that's a much bigger presence. It's very bulky, they puff their chest out, they're very intimidating animals. So on the outside, they are very friendly animals, but then you do hear some stories about them being aggressive, especially the red kangaroo. So I always thought to myself, this would be a good creature to have in a creature feature. But then they haven't really made any kangaroo horror films, or not to my knowledge anyway. And so I thought, alright, well finally they're actually doing this. And when I saw the trailer, I thought this actually looks fairly interesting. It has Michael Biehn, who is an iconic actor out of the United States, and also Aaron Pedersen, who is a local actor that I'm a massive fan of. So to have those two names with a horror comedy featuring a zombie kangaroo, I thought to myself, okay, I'm very interested, I'm in. And I had my fingers crossed that this was going to be an absolute knockout. But after watching this movie, to say that I was disappointed is a massive understatement. This movie just has no self-awareness whatsoever. So it pains me to say it because I wanted to love it. As I said, it's an iconic creature of Australia, and to have it as a horror comedy, I thought, well, I love comedy from Australia. You know, I'm biased with that. You know, I gravitate to Australian humour more so than anything else. And so to have all these elements thrown in there as far as a recipe is concerned, the end result is just bitter disappointment. As I said, that lack of self-awareness really gets in the way, and that's something I'll go into a little bit later. But one of the very small positives that this movie has is that it uses the outback as a secondary villain, and this is something that a lot of Australian horror films do. The outback is a very, very large area, and it shows you how insignificant you are, that you could go missing at the click of a finger. And having this undead kangaroo roaming the countryside, you're never quite sure where it is, and so it does show you that sense of isolation, and as I said, that psychological presence is always there. And that was something that I was really impressed with. The opening sequence to this movie I thought was actually quite unnerving. The way the visuals are used, I thought production wise is actually fairly impressive, and it shows that that little bit of money was actually thrown into there. I thought as though the gore scenes are actually quite impressive. There's a lot of practical gore, which is something that surprised me, and so that was something else that I liked. And there were some set pieces that I thought were fairly impressive involving the kangaroo, but unfortunately those positives are far outweighed by the negatives, and the biggest negative is down to the fact that this has no self-awareness whatsoever. This is a movie that is taking itself way too seriously, and it takes you off all of the good parts of this movie. So it's taking all the attention away from the zombie kangaroo, and it's trying to give you an insight into this damaged character of the main character. But it's an insane story. It's an undead kangaroo, so why are we not focusing on the undead kangaroo? Why aren't we having a lot more fun than we're actually having? We have these 2D cardboard cutout characters that are having melodramatic moments with themselves, but because you don't care, it just doesn't work. And so the majority of this movie is on this police officer, but that's not why you're watching this movie. You're watching this movie for an undead kangaroo, a zombie kangaroo. And so I just thought to myself, there was so much in this film that just felt completely out of place, and it belonged in a completely different film. And unfortunately, because it focuses on all the wrong areas, it just didn't realise the movie that it could have been. And so the writing of this movie was very, very mediocre. I thought some of the exchanges were cringeworthy, and it was just not funny at all. This could almost be regarded as a straight-out horror film without any humour, but because it's such an insane story, why didn't have humour thrown in there? And so this is something that I just can't understand. It just needed a writer who had a better sense of humour and was willing to take himself a lot less seriously, because as a drama, this just doesn't work, because you know what the story's about, and you watch this movie and you're expecting something that you just don't get enough of. And so you just left feeling very irritated, and you're scratching your head thinking, what were these makers actually thinking when they created this movie? So the CGI in this movie was actually pretty bad for the kangaroo. There were some instances where you don't see the kangaroo clearly, that worked a lot better, but when you see the kangaroo, the CGI is really bad. But if this movie took itself a lot less serious, the CGI would be forgivable because it'd give you that comedic charm. But because it's taking itself so seriously, the CGI just comes across as really out of place and eliminates a lot of the horror. So as far as a horror film is concerned, it's very weak. As far as a comedy is concerned, it's non-existent, and you're just focusing on really irritating aspects of the movie. It just comes across as a wasted opportunity. This could have been a classic, but it just needed a better writer and just a lot more focus on all the right areas. So I had no idea what went wrong with The Red, but unfortunately it comes across as a massive, massive letdown. It should have been so much better than it was, and as a result of that, I'm only going to give The Red 1 star. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.